The most breathtaking views on Earth are often found in places that strictly forbid human life. There is a mountain so lethal that 1 out of every 3 climbers who reach the summit never return. And a massive abyss in the Russian tundra that creates a vacuum powerful enough to pull aircraft from the sky. These are the impossible frontiers, where the planet stops being a home and starts becoming an adversary. Welcome to Untamed Globe. We are heading into the most extreme corners of our world. Immense sediment loads turn the entire current an opaque, golden color high on the Loess Plateau. Every cubic meter of water carries up to 75 pounds or 34 kilograms of mud, creating the most sediment-rich flow on the planet. This weight reaches a dramatic geological choke point at Huku. Here, the riverbed suddenly constricts from a width of nearly 1,000 feet, or 300 meters, to a mere 65 feet, or 20 meters. The resulting hydraulic pressure forces the water through a vertical plunge of 50 feet or 15 meters into a jagged stone trench. A constant mist of yellow spray rises from the impact, coating the surrounding cliffs in a fine layer of silt. Historically, such power has proven lethal, as seen in the 1931 floods that claimed between 1 and 4 million lives across 9 different provinces. High above the Sicilian coastline, a giant exhales into the Mediterranean sky. Standing at an elevation of roughly 11,000 feet, or 3,350 meters, this active stratovolcano performs a rare atmospheric trick found almost nowhere else on the planet. Under specific pressure conditions, the craters release perfectly circular white volcanic vortex rings that drift through the air like ghostly halos. While the summits frequently glow with rivers of molten basalt, a strange biological phenomenon unfolds among the cooling rocks. Every summer, millions of ladybugs migrate toward the active peaks, huddling together for warmth and shelter against the volcanic stone. The surrounding soil, enriched by centuries of ash, sustains sprawling vineyards that produce wines with a distinct metallic edge. Despite the constant threat of eruption, life here has adapted to the rhythm of the mountain, thriving in the shadow of a peak that continues to reshape the island with every pulse of heat. The temperature drops sharply as the landscape gives way to a massive, spiraling void carved into the Siberian permafrost. Reaching a depth of 1,722 feet, or 525 meters, this industrial abyss is so immense that it creates its own localized weather system. The downward airflow is powerful enough to generate a suction effect, leading to a permanent ban on helicopters flying over the crater to avoid being pulled into the depths. Heavy trucks, weighing hundreds of tons, appear as tiny specks as they navigate the unpaved spiral road. A single trip from the floor of the pit to the surface takes more than 2.5 hours under a full load. In the nearby town, engines must run continuously throughout the winter months to prevent fuel from freezing solid, while the residents live on the literal threshold of one of the largest man-made excavations in history. Where the scorching dunes of the Namib Desert collide with the icy currents of the Atlantic, a graveyard of rusted steel and bleached bone stretches for miles. Dense fog and treacherous hidden reefs have claimed more than 1,000 shipwrecks along this desolate shoreline. The shifting sands are constantly in motion, reclaiming territory from the ocean and leaving vessels that once sank offshore stranded hundreds of yards inland, surrounded by nothing but dust. This wasteland supports a food chain that defies conventional logic. Desert-adapted lions roam the dunes, stalking the beaches to hunt Cape Fur seals under the cover of the mist. Meanwhile, the Welwitschia plant survives for more than 1,000 years by drinking nothing but the moisture from the morning fog. As winter settles over the Russian Far East, the sea undergoes a violent transformation into a solid, obsidian-colored highway. The water freezes with such stability that it becomes a primary transport route for heavy vehicles, which bypass land roads to travel directly across the frozen bay for months at a time. When the wind clears the surface of snow, the ice appears almost entirely black, revealing the dark, moving depths beneath a layer nearly 3 feet, or 90 centimeters, thick. The silence of the landscape is frequently broken by the resonant metallic cracks of the ice expanding and contracting under the weight of the cold. In the most extreme sections, locals cut openings through the crust to participate in winter swims, wearing insulated survival suits to float among the jagged white fragments. Life here does not pause for the sub-zero temperatures. Instead, the community treats the frozen ocean as an extension of the city itself. Over 4,000 miles of winding currents carry 1/5 of the world's unfrozen fresh water toward the Atlantic. Despite this staggering scale, not a single bridge spans the main channel of the Amazon River, leaving transportation entirely to the rhythm of boats and ferries. Beneath the silt-heavy surface, a predatory hierarchy thrives, led by black caimans that can grow to 20 feet or 6 meters in length. Alongside these giants, electric eels capable of discharging 860 volts patrol the submerged forests. During the flood season, the water rises so high that these predators swim among the tree tops of the canopy. The environment remains a dense, humid maze where shifting currents and submerged tree trunks make every mile a test of endurance. Navigating this system feels like moving through a primitive world that has successfully resisted the intrusion of modern infrastructure for centuries. The Potaro River approaches a sudden geological fracture deep within the Guyanese wilderness, plunging 741 feet or 226 meters into a jagged gorge. This vertical drop is 5 times the height of Niagara Falls, yet it remains one of the most isolated natural wonders on the planet, reachable mostly by small aircraft landing on a narrow dirt strip. The constant mist created by the impact supports a micro-ecosystem where carnivorous plants cling to the cliffs. Within the water-filled leaves of giant tank bromeliads, the tiny, golden rocket frog spends its entire life cycle, never once touching the ground. Only about 8,000 people reach this rim each year, witnessing a raw display of hydraulic power that has carved a 5-mile zigzag canyon through the ancient sandstone. Transitioning to the frozen heart of North America, the landscape opens into 31,700 square miles of clear, frigid water. The scale of the horizon mimics a freshwater ocean, where visibility often extends beyond 65 feet or 20 meters into the depths. This clarity masks a volatile nature. Changes in atmospheric pressure trigger a phenomenon known as a seiche, causing water levels to oscillate violently and send sudden surges crashing into the shoreline. These unexpected waves have claimed countless vessels throughout history, leaving their hulls perfectly preserved in the cold, low-nutrient environment. Even in midsummer, the surface temperatures remain low enough to induce hypothermia within minutes. On the Meghalaya Plateau, the Indian Ocean monsoons are forced upward, condensing into a near-constant deluge that defines every aspect of local life. With an average annual rainfall exceeding 467 inches, or 11,800 millimeters, the village of Mawsynram sees low clouds drift through open windows and into living rooms. Residents navigate the downpours wearing nups, dome-shaped rain shields woven from bamboo and banana leaves that leave their hands free for daily labor. To overcome the force of the rain, the community has learned to manipulate nature itself. By guiding the roots of rubber trees across surging streams, they cultivate living bridges that grow stronger and more resilient over time. Standing firm against the moisture that would rot any wooden or steel structure within a single season. The Danakil Depression hosts a hydrothermal field where the ground bleeds neon yellow, vibrant green, and burnt orange. Boiling brine and liquid sulfur seep through salt chimneys across a landscape resembling a high-pressure chemical laboratory. These technicolor structures look like dreams, but they carry the heavy stench of a rotting catastrophe. With temperatures frequently exceeding 110 degrees Fahrenheit or 43 degrees Celsius, it holds the record for the highest average temperature for an inhabited location. Acidic pools of iron-rich water bubble constantly, and the air carries invisible toxic gases that make breathing a calculated risk. No known life form survives within these salt flats. The silence only breaks for the hissing of mineral crusts and the gurgling of subterranean heat. Deep within the Caribbean, the Earth has opened up to reveal a massive reservoir of liquid asphalt covering roughly 100 acres. This dark, viscous surface behaves like a slow-motion whirlpool, pulling everything that falls onto its surface into the depths. Over centuries, the lake has functioned as a natural preservation system, trapping giant sloths, prehistoric fossils, and indigenous artifacts in an airtight, oxygen-free environment. Decades later, the shifting currents of the bitumen push these objects back to the surface, appearing nearly as fresh as the day they were swallowed. The lake constantly hisses as pockets of hydrocarbon gases escape, creating a black, undulating terrain that has provided the material to pave roads from London to New York City. High in the Altiplano, a brilliant turquoise body of water rests at the base of the Licancabur volcano. While the color suggests a pristine alpine paradise, the liquid is a saturated cocktail of arsenic, lead, and magnesium carbonate. Even when temperatures drop to 20 degrees below 0 Fahrenheit or minus 34 degrees Celsius, the lake refuses to freeze. A massive concentration of dissolved minerals acts as a heavy-duty anti-freeze, allowing the surface to remain liquid in a climate that would solidify almost any other body of water on Earth. sprawling industrial complexes define the horizon within the Arctic Circle, where a city of 180,000 people exists inside a permanent cloud of emissions. Built atop some of the largest nickel and palladium deposits on Earth, the settlement functions as a massive powerhouse of metallurgical production. The environmental cost remains visible in the Daldecan River, which periodically turns a vivid, terrifying red due to chemical leakages. Sulfur dioxide levels often exceed safe limits by hundreds of times, damaging the surrounding tundra for miles. To attract workers to this toxic, frozen environment, the state provides wages and benefits significantly higher than the national average, alongside an earlier retirement age. Residents trade their long-term health for economic security, navigating a landscape where the trees have turned to skeletons and the snow frequently falls in shades of black and gray. Statistical probability dictates that 1 out of every 3 climbers attempting to stand atop the 10 peaks of the Annapurna Massif will never descend. Rising 26,545 feet, or 8,091 meters, the summit remains the most lethal mountaineering objective on the planet. Massive sheets of ice, known as seracs, hang precariously from the upper slopes, threatening to collapse without warning and trigger spontaneous avalanches that wipe out entire camps. The geological instability of the mountain makes traditional climbing techniques almost irrelevant against the sheer volume of falling debris. Most expeditions encounter hurricane force winds and temperatures reaching 40 degrees below 0 Fahrenheit or minus 40 degrees Celsius. While other peaks offer a test of skill, this Himalayan giant presents a game of high-stakes probability where the terrain itself dictates the survival of even the most experienced alpinists in the world. Transitioning from frozen summits to the lowest point in North America reveals a basin where the air regularly heats to 130 degrees Fahrenheit or 54 degrees Celsius. A geological mystery unfolds at the Racetrack Playa, a dry lake bed within the scorched valley floor. Heavy rocks weighing dozens of pounds glide across the mud here without any human or animal intervention. These stones leave long, winding tracks behind them, some stretching for hundreds of feet. For decades, scientists struggled to explain the movement until discovering that rare winter rains create thin floating ice sheets that catch the wind and push the boulders at a few yards per minute. The environment remains so dry that years pass without a single drop of measurable rain. The southern side of the 9th highest peak on Earth presents a vertical wall of rock and ice that rises 15,000 feet, or 4,500 meters, from the base. This geological feature, known as the Rupel Face, ranks as the largest mountain wall in existence, so steep that snow cannot cling to its dark granite surface. Its name translates from Sanskrit as Naked Mountain, but the mountaineering community remembers it as the Killer Mountain, due to a relentless history of fatalities. Hermann Buhl became the first person to reach the summit alone and without supplemental oxygen in 1953, but the mountain continues to demand an extreme toll. Frequent rockfalls and massive ice collapses dominate the lower slopes, making the ascent a brutal endurance test against the sheer scale of the Karakoram Range. Hidden within the Myra Valley, a surge of white water drops 1,640 feet, or 500 meters, creating the tallest natural waterfall in Italy. This hydraulic spectacle only appears during the transition from late spring to early summer, when the glacial reservoir above begins to overflow due to rapid snowmelt. By midsummer, the source depletes entirely, leaving behind a dry, vertical scar on the limestone cliff where the water once thundered. Travelers must time their arrival to a specific window of a few weeks to witness the cascade before it vanishes back into the silence of the mountains. A small stone shelter stands on a narrow ledge overlooking the primary plunge, offering a view of the ephemeral flow before the summer heat erases the river from the landscape. Life persists at the absolute bottom of the globe, where the Amundsen Scott Station sits atop a shifting ice sheet nearly 2 miles or 3 kilometers thick. Temperatures frequently plummet to minus 117 degrees Fahrenheit or minus 83 degrees Celsius, a level of cold that freezes aviation fuel and isolates the crew for 8 months of the year. Every January 1st, researchers must physically relocate the geographic South Pole marker because the entire station drifts 33 feet or 10 meters annually. To maintain psychological and physical health during 6 months of total darkness, a high-tech hydroponic greenhouse operates 24 hours a day. This pressurized chamber provides the only fresh vegetables within thousands of miles, creating a humid green sanctuary that stands apart from the sterile, white desert of the Antarctic plateau. Abandoned apartments and a rusted yellow Ferris wheel stand as silent witnesses to the 1986 nuclear disaster. Within this 1,000 square mile, or 2,600 square kilometer exclusion zone, a biological anomaly known as the Red Forest emerged after pine trees absorbed lethal doses of radiation. These trees turned a ginger-brown color and died, yet they refused to decay for decades. The intense radiation sterilized the soil, killing off the fungi, insects, and microorganisms responsible for natural decomposition. Today, the zone remains a mosaic of danger, where walking just a few feet off a paved road can spike radiation readings by thousands of times. Nature has reoccupied the concrete ruins, with wolves and wild horses roaming streets where human activity ceased in a single afternoon. Tucked away in the Indian Ocean, a landscape exists that feels disconnected from the rest of the biological world. Socotra Island hosts over 300 species found nowhere else on Earth, most notably the dragon's blood tree, which features a dense, umbrella-shaped canopy and thick, red sap. The limestone plateaus and jagged granite mountains resemble the surface of a distant planet. For millions of years, the isolation of this archipelago has allowed evolution to take a bizarre turn, producing bulbous bottle trees and giant succulents that store water in their swollen trunks to survive the arid, monsoon-swept climate. This ecosystem functions as a living laboratory, a prehistoric remnant that has remained largely unchanged by the rapid developments of the modern mainland. Reaching into the Kara Sea, the end of the world serves as a meeting point for global energy demands and an ancient nomadic culture. The Nenets people have navigated this Arctic tundra for thousands of years, migrating up to 750 miles or 1,200 kilometers annually with herds of 300,000 reindeer. Beneath the hooves of these animals lies the world's largest natural gas reserve, where massive industrial extraction complexes now rise directly out of the permafrost. These steel structures sit on deep pilings to prevent them from sinking as the frozen ground fluctuates with the seasons. The landscape occasionally reveals prehistoric treasures, such as the perfectly preserved 42,000-year-old Liuba mammoth, proving that the ground itself guards a history far older than the industrial age. "25 million years of geological history rest within a tectonic rift in Siberia, creating a basin 5,387 feet or 1,642 meters deep. Holding 20% of the world's liquid fresh water, the lake features a crystalline surface where visibility extends 130 feet or 40 meters below. During the winter months, a violent biological phenomenon occurs as methane gas rises from the lakebed and becomes trapped within the freezing ice. These white, circular bubbles stack in vertical columns, creating a beautiful yet volatile lattice that can ignite if the surface is breached. Strong winds reaching 89 miles, or 143 kilometers per hour frequently sweep the smooth ice, making it impossible for anything to remain stationary. Endemic species like the nerpa, the only freshwater seal on the planet, survive within this frigid ecosystem, where the ice constantly groans and cracks with the resonance of a cathedral. A massive volcanic caldera rises out of the Philippine Sea, acting as a natural fortress for a small village of less than 200 residents. The topography of Aogashima features a smaller, active volcano nestled directly inside the center of a much larger crater, creating a dramatic island within an island effect. Settling on this isolated peak means coexisting with a Class C active volcano that last erupted in the late 1700s, claiming nearly half the population at the time. Today, the community utilizes geothermal heat to power steam saunas and cook food in public salt-producing facilities. Access remains incredibly difficult, with a single harbor carved into the steep cliffs and a tiny helipad serving as the only lifelines to the mainland. The residents navigate narrow, winding roads surrounded by lush, tropical greenery. "750 degrees of sustained heat radiate from a collapsed drilling rig in the heart of the Turkmen Sands. Since 1971, the Darvaza gas crater has burned continuously, creating a glowing pit 65 feet or 20 meters deep that is visible from miles away in the dark. The surrounding dunes reach heights of nearly 300 feet or 91 meters, hiding a geological past where this entire region sat beneath a prehistoric sea. Explorers frequently find marine fossils and perfectly rounded stone concretions scattered among the crescent-shaped ridges. Despite the arid surface, a massive canal system stretches 800 miles, or 1,300 kilometers, across the desert to transport water from the Amu Darya River. This engineering feat battles constant dust storms and shifting sediment to sustain life in a territory defined by fire and ancient salt. Its 130 volcanic craters align in a perfect scar across the Icelandic highlands, the result of a catastrophic eruption in 1783. This event produced the largest volume of lava in recorded history, releasing a toxic haze of hydrofluoric acid and sulfur dioxide that devastated the global climate. The fallout led to the death of 25% of the Icelandic population and caused agricultural collapses as far away as Europe and Asia. Today, the jagged, black basalt of the Skaftareldar lava field is covered by a thick, resilient layer of bright green Racemytrium moss. This vibrant vegetation creates a visual paradox where the softest texture in nature blankets a landscape born from the most violent geological destruction. Access to this remote site requires crossing glacial rivers and navigating unpaved mountain roads that remain closed throughout the winter, leaving the craters in a state of silent, moss-covered isolation. We have just traversed 25 of the most extreme coordinates on the map, witnessing a planet that displays both brutal force and haunting beauty. These frontiers serve as a reminder that humanity does not command the Earth. We are merely guests, learning to exist within its complex rhythms. If you are ready for the next stage of the journey, subscribe to stay connected with the wonders here at Untamed Globe. Thank you for traveling with us, and take a moment to appreciate the incredible world around you.